there's a few centres coming through the system, but again, Origin, there's twists and turns even before there's kick-off. So you just got to hope that most of these guys stay healthy.
Well, g'day and welcome to our Round 8 edition of Queenslander for the year. Almost a third of the way through the season. This competition is flying through this year. Lots of different ups and downs, but one down, for the Broncos at the moment. Reece Walsh out for 4 to 6 weeks with that knee injury. That's quite a devastating blow for them. Yeah, shattering blow for the Broncos. I guess it adds a little bit of pressure to the team from their performance. And it really was one of those injuries when he looked like he got the bump first. It didn't appear as though it was going to be that bad, but the medical report was worse than expected, and that's certainly going to put some pressure on teammates at the Broncos. Yeah, it really changes up the dynamic of that team too, Lockyer.
Yeah, I think Selwyn will probably go back to fullback. I don't know for sure, but he'll go back there, which changes. He's a big body, he'll bring the ball back. I think it gets him into the game a bit more for Selwyn. So I guess I'm interested to see how they adapt without Reece, but also how Selwyn goes at the back.
Also has consequences for Queensland with Maroons wise. So essentially rules out Reece Walsh for game one. So does that put Kalyn Ponga in the driver's seat for that one jersey?
Yeah, I guess it does. Having seen some of his previous performances, it's very hard not to be impressed by those. It's certainly stepping up a level here, and he is going to have to produce his best, but has previously done so, and I think that it will be a little bit of a challenge that he'll enjoy taking on.
It is pretty, I know it's a long way to go, Lockyer, but it's pretty seamless. Kalyn's done it all before, even though he didn't play one last year's series.
Yeah, well, they go into camp just over 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It's getting close. Kalyn, he's obviously experienced at that level. I know Billy holds him in high regard, so I guess if the Knights, can
score some tries,
find some form, Kalyn will be a part of that. But fingers crossed that Kalyn's fit and healthy by the time the team gets announced.
Anything special that you look for him, Lockyer? I mean, his positional play at fullback certainly has been quite impressive at previous occasions.
I think he's always going to bring attack. It's what he does in defence. Defence is so important at Origin level, and I think his communication and his organising of the defensive line and getting to the ball on the full when it's kicked is, probably 3 things that I reckon, well, I know I'd look at. I know Billy would be looking at that first because he knows what he can bring with the footy.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else we're missing? So Ponga obviously in the driver's seat. Who's the next rung down in terms of fullbacks? Hammer, maybe?
Yeah, I guess so. Hammer, having seen some of the brilliance that he displays on many occasions, I think it's hard not to get excited and bring his name up. There may be some suggesting that that's not him. He's playing different positions now. Yeah. But I guess the coach will make his mind up. Conversing with the selectors as well, I think having displayed some wonderful performances previously, it's hard not to be excited by his opportunities.
He's so crucial in the centres for Queensland, though, Lockyer?
Yeah, I think there's a few centres coming through the system, but again, Origin, there's twists and turns even before there's kick-off. So we just got to hope that most of these guys stay healthy, and there's. I think Jai Gray's been outstanding for the Bunnies.
Definitely.
Queenslander. So there's a few options there, and I guess they just keep playing well and stay fit, and then that's a good headache for Billy to have.
Yeah, and Hammer essentially played fullback in game one last year when Reece Walsh went down injured, so it's good to have his versatility in the side when he's lining up in the centres for Queensland. Another injury concern also for Harry Grant with that hamstring strain. The Storm have come out today and said it's not as bad as first thought. He could be back now in 2 to 3 weeks, so he might get a game or 2 before Origin. But you guys, in the past, what's it like with a hamstring strain? Like, that's something you don't want to mess with, and that's a concern going into an Origin game?
Well, believe it or not, I did a hamstring once at my very fast speed that I used to run at. I was the slowest bloke on the field and still did a hammy. But they must be treated the right way. If you gamble with hamstring injuries coming back a little bit too soon, certainly it's not going to be quite easy. But he is a wonderful player, Harry. There's a lot of players at Melbourne who rely upon him. Certainly, that'll be the Queenslanders as well.
Well, Harry's so effective because of his speed out of dummy half. So he relies a fair bit on that speed off the mark.
Yeah.
So the hamstring's a big part of that. And there's a saying, once you think the hamstring's right to go, give it one more week.
Yeah.
So I think he'll be patient.
Yeah, good point, Lockyer. And I think having seen some of Craig Bellamy's decision-making previously, I don't think he'll do any gambling.
Yeah. I think that game against the Dolphins highlighted how crucial Harry Grant is to that team. Like, he's almost the glue that held it together, and he wasn't there the other night. It fell apart.
Yeah, well, give the Dolphins some credit. But,
Yeah.
But, they didn't have Marshall King either,
Yeah.
Dolphins. And, look, we covered that game. Jerome Hughes was on fire early, but once the game started to break up and soften up, I think they missed Harry's explosiveness.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And they did. I reckon the Dolphins did a favour for every other team in the competition, has now got a bit more confidence going in against the Storm, especially given they were 14 down. Like, Storm don't lose games when they're 14 down. Now other teams will maybe use that as a blueprint.
Well, they fly out of the blocks, the Storm. And so... But the one thing they've always been challenged with, because they get out of the box and then they just know how to play from the front foot. If they get behind on the scoreboard, it's a bit foreign to them. So I guess they struggle to, win back the momentum on the scoreboard because they're not used to being behind.
Yeah, you're right, Lockyer. They play a completely different game. They go searching for ideas, new thoughts that come in where they've relied upon the one pattern of play throughout the course of the season. And when it doesn't go well for them, they start to be a little bit too concerned and start to rely upon things that aren't part of their everyday game.
Yep, and as Lockie touched on there, just 35 days to go before Origin 1, and you'll see it exclusive, live and free right here on Channel 9 and the 9 Now app. Also, the Women's Origin, Game 1 of their series kicks off here in Brisbane Suncorp Stadium next week. The day before Magic Round, so the Queensland Maroons out to defend their title against New South Wales there. So, yeah, Origin well and truly on the way. But while we're on the topic of the Finns, let's keep going there, Lockie. What's that said about the club and the team, the mentality that exists? They've beaten the grand finalists from last year in back-to-back weeks. They haven't just had one good performance, they've had two really good performances.
Yeah, and then you go back to that, they did a job on the Titans, and they were very good against the Broncos, even though they got beat. So they've had a good month after a poor start, but the last couple of weeks, watching them from the sideline, they look like, they're playing like a top 4 team.
Yeah.
They're actually just getting you in an arm wrestle, and they're breaking you down slowly, and then once they break you, they score points. So it's been really impressive, and full credit to them.
And Adam, it might sound funny, but despite beating last year's grand finalists, it's impossible not to be impressed with that. I think the coach is more concerned with how they lost the games against the teams that weren't good enough to make last year's grand final. And they're the problem areas that he'll be sitting down in front of the video and trying to work out exactly what went wrong and why they went wrong.
Yeah, losses to the Rabbitohs and the Tigers early on the year may come back and haunt them, but I've got them in my top 8. What about you guys?
I like what I'm saying. I'd probably, even though I know Kristian Woolf's a good coach, I probably thought the Bennett curse was probably still going to be a bit tricky for him. But the footy they're playing, and I reckon you can see the camaraderie amongst them. They're a real tight group. Look, I think if their key players stay healthy, I think they'll play finals. Yeah,
like Lockie, I thought that curse was going to be there, and obviously after the Bennett deal, it really did seem as though it was going to be a tough time for them. But I've been very impressed with some of their performances. They really do appear to be displaying the type of footy that gets them into a match-winning situation. Certainly, they've got to continue that.
Yeah, speaking to the Dolphins players out there, I said, what do you like about Kristian Woolf? And they say, everyone thinks he's so intense because he looks so intense. And they said he's actually quite calm, and that's helped him out throughout the season. I guess how beneficial is that to have that coach who behind the scenes is actually calm and doesn't throw his lollies out?
Well, you saw that when they had a poor start.
Yeah.
And everyone was going, oh, you know, this doesn't look good, this doesn't look good. But he just stayed calm, just, you know, kept them all relaxed and said, well, we keep working hard, it'll turn. So, you know, you can learn a lot about an individual, a coach, how they handle adversity and handle it very well. And they've come out the other side and they're playing for him. So, yeah, well done.
Yeah, I like him. I like him as a guy. He's very honest up front, and I like him as a coach. And he really does appear to have full trust from the players on board at the moment. And it'll be interesting to see, you know, if we can go forward a few months, how they're going to be finishing the end of the season.
And a few changes to the Dolphins team. As I mentioned, I was at training earlier today. So Felice Kafusi's definitely out with that knee injury. Jeremy Marshall-King's out again for another week. They need to wait till that infection fully heals up so it doesn't get, I guess, reinfected. So Francis Molo will make his debut. He comes from the Dragons earlier this year. And they reckon Max Plath might actually play, which is stunning. He went off with that foot injury.
Plantar fascia.
Yeah, but they said it's been misdiagnosed. It's not actually that. It's more of a ligament issue. So it's not as bad as first thought. He could play this weekend. Remember, it's a long turnaround. They play the Raiders on Sunday afternoon. So either that or potentially the week after. And that's good for his origin prospects too.
There's no doubting how tough he is.
Yeah.
But I'd also try and be patient with that too, because you'd rather him freshen right up and get it right so it's not affecting him. But he's the type of bloke, he'll push through pain. Yeah. But is he going to be 100% effective, you know, to what he can be?
Yeah.
That's probably the trick.
Maybe give him one more week and bring him back for Magic Round. But Joey, once again, high in his praise for Katoa, who continues to get better and better. You know, what are you liking about Katoa, well, as a former playmaker yourself?
He takes his time. He appears to have very good vision, and I'm sure Lockyer does the same with a lot of the players, the playmakers. You watch for what they're watching for, looking for, you know, the gaps, the opportunities that present themselves, and he just appears to be very calm. Doesn't take too many bad options or get too carried away with it. And I think he's been quite good, quite comfortable as the match progresses.
He's got a very good temperament, but what he does really well is he executes the set plays. You know, he always talks about how he wants to go to the line and be direct, to commit players, draw them into him, and then create the space around him. And he's very good at that.
And does it extremely well with the more experienced players around him. And I used to love that, and that was something being in Lockie's pocket again when he had some players that had 4 or 5 years more experience for him when he first came into grade. He was telling them what he wanted from those players, and they are the players that go ahead in leaps and bounds. And it just shows some real control and belief in your own game, and that's very rewarding.
He almost plays in slow motion. Like almost watching it. I remember growing up, Cliffy Lyons was a player who almost played in slow motion. There's elements of that to Katoa. I think it was the try to Lemuelu where he goes to the line. Everyone thought it was forward, but he just held it back late. And the kick for Cody Nikorima. Do you get that sense?
Yeah, I think this bloke over here, they just slow the game down to their pace. Yeah. And they make it look easy. And, you know, Cliffy was like that. Isaiah's definitely like that, and then that was Wally's greatest strength. You know, it was like they were playing the game at a different speed, but no one could work it out. Yeah,
I think Katoa speaks to the referee a little bit less than you used to speak to the referee, Wal.
Perhaps. That may be the... wouldn't rob a bank with you. You'd be pointing your finger at me on the way out. But no, he's in good control. I like the outlook of him.
Do you think he finishes the season as a top 5 halfback, or he's almost there? So you look at the halfbacks at the moment. Cleary obviously still number 1, even though it's been a slow start to the year. Jerome Hughes runs on the board, Dally M medal winner. Mitchell Moses has just come back from injury. He was great in Origin. Yeah, Reynolds. There's 4 of the top 5. Who else would you have above him? I think
what you think now can be completely different by the end of the year, depending on how well their respective teams go. But
he's right up there.
He's working his way up the list.
Yeah. Every sort of game we see.
Yeah, and doing so because he's got the work from the big boys in front. They're the ones that we often hear, and I'm sure Lockyer the same, we always used to hear from the forwards about we're the ones that do all the hard work and get you in good position for you blokes to go and get your name in the paper or an interview on TV. And you've got to rely upon them. If they can dictate, if they can control and outplay their opposition, then you're in a good position to do it.
Well, the two buys on the edge,
Lemuelu, yeah, and Kulikefu from the Cowboys, yeah.
And then you've got Josh Kerr, who comes off the bench.
Yeah.
Those three guys have massive impact on
and Tabuai-Fidow's been better than I think people thought, yeah.
I've been a bit surprised. Josh Kerr, I've been pretty impressed.
Yeah,
with some of the performances.
Outstanding.
He's obviously a great performer, but has gone ahead and taken that to new levels.
And he's a character. Game needs more characters like him. He's just so fun to see and get excited about. Yeah,
the microwave man.
That's it. Yeah. I was talking about the Nines Wide Ball Sport coverage last week. Speaking of Josh Kerr, he's going to be my Tab big call this week. So thanks to the Tab, we do a big call every week. I reckon he's going to score another try again. So they play the Raiders Sunday afternoon down there in Canberra. It'll be a tough one against Ricky's men. He set up a good try 2 weeks ago against the Panthers. He scored one himself against the Melbourne Storm. So I'm doubling down. Josh Kerr to score another try this week is my Tab big call.
I'm going for the Dolphins Raiders. The Raiders are at home.
Yeah.
That makes them a better side.
Yeah.
They always perform very well at home, better than they do on the road. And I'm predicting that there aren't too many teams that get up over the top of them on their home track. But I think the Dolphins are going to produce a big effort and gain plenty of respect from the rest of the competition.
Yeah.
So my big call last week, well, Jaden Campbell get a hat-trick. He didn't end up playing.
So I think that's null and void. Like, you get your money back for that.
You get 2 this week.
But you've been really good on this. You tipped the Dolphins to beat the Panthers and the Storm. I think you're leading the big calls this year.
I reckon Cowboys have had a break. Titans obviously need a win, but it's up in Townsville. But I reckon Jackson Purdue, who I think's he's a star in the making.
Yeah.
I'll let him have a hat-trick this week. So
there we go.
He'll score 3.
Run right, 5:30 kickoff game up there in Townsville. Perfect conditions for him. But if Wall's tip does get up, the Finns win 4 wins in a row. That'll be a club record. So they've only ever won 3 in a row. If they win this weekend, it'll be 4 in a row. So hopefully the Raiders are a bit fatigued. Trips to Darwin and the Gold Coast coming off the back for them. But the big game that kicks off this weekend's round, Thursday night footy down the road at Suncorp Stadium. Broncos against the Bulldogs. How well do the Broncos back up from that devastating loss, Golden Point, to the Warriors? It seems losses like that can go one or two ways. They can either really make you a bit more motivated, or you can just fall off from that heartbreak. Yeah,
well, I'm very hopeful that the Broncos are going to repair their game a little bit. Up against the Dogs, that is never fun. I always find that they were the team that used to make it uncomfortable for me. Every time I played against them, it was always quite a difficult challenge to come up against it. They're big boys up front. They played a physical, confrontational game, and that's certainly going to continue in this one. If the Broncos are going to win, they're going to have to be at their best, and their key playmakers are going to have to do plenty of work, and there'll be a little bit thrown on Adam Reynolds' shoulder.
Yeah. I thought the attitude was good the other night. I know a loss like that, it's hard losing in Golden Point, it's hard to lose a close game. But I just thought when they were 18-6 down and they fought their way back into it, that was a good sign. Yeah. So I think you take that as a positive, because what they're going to have, come across on Thursday night is probably the longest arm wrestle they're going to have to go. Because I think the Bulldogs have only let in 1 try in the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Last 2 games, I'm pretty sure they've held their opposition
0
to nil.
And then the week before that was 1 try.
Yeah.
So their defence is phenomenal, and you're going to have to be patient, and you're just going to have to hang in there for long periods of time to try and get those opportunities to score points against them.
Yeah. What do you think's going on with Ben Hunt? He just seemed a bit off in that Warriors game. Do we just say that's a one-off, or...?
Yeah, look, the conditions weren't, they weren't great for ball-playing sort of players. So I think he just had a bit of a night where the conditions probably affected his confidence and affected his execution. So he's been around long enough. I think we'll get a reaction out of him.
Yeah, okay.
And sometimes the guys that are in charge of the ball, offering opportunities to those in support. A lot of that can be assisted by the amount of people that they have in support, whether they're there, and if the players have been in a very physical, confrontational battle and are a little bit too tired to do it. So if they've got the numbers, but I'm sure that he's got the experience on board to lead the way.
Yeah, everyone keeps saying to Ezra Mam's only a few weeks away, but like surely Lockyer, he doesn't come straight back in the team. He plays Queensland Cup for a few weeks, because you've got to think he didn't play any trials because he wasn't allowed to, and he essentially hasn't played since August last year. So you'd think he wouldn't come straight back in the team unless there was a major injury.
Yeah, again, I don't know what Madge's plans are with Ezra, but you know, he hasn't played footy for a long time.
Yeah,
you know, he might be fit training, but you know, there's
a massive difference.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And match fitness takes a little while, and you know, Ezra's probably expecting that to happen. But I guess we'll wait and see. The other night they had 3 hookers in the team.
Yeah.
But then Ben Hunt still spent some time at hooker as well. So,
Yeah.
so you know, so is that a sign that that's, you know, he's going
In
to
the works. Yeah.
But we'll wait and see. There was a lot of hookers running around out there.
Yeah, we touched on it earlier with the Origin talk with Cobbo going back to fullback while Walsh is out. In a way, is that almost a good way for Cobbo to get him more involved, Walt? Because he's the kind of player of like, the more time he has with ball in hand, the better. And almost if he has more responsibility.
Yeah, well, he's carrying that responsibility, Adam. You hit the nail on the head there. And to be in a position like that, I think it probably offers the chance to those. And I remember watching Lockyer as a young guy coming from the bush and then getting the chance to see him. He got moved to fullback, and there were a lot of people saying, "Oh, he won't be handling the shift to fullback." Well, it was you know, a golden performance virtually every week without filling your pocket up, Lockyer. But it was offering him an opportunity to position himself in the backline plays, and I think he's got that, the big fella, coming up this week. And if he does so with a fair bit of force involved in every card of the footy, I think we could be in for a performance that will excite him, and he'll be offering the role to the coach of, well, maybe I can go back there again.
Yeah.
Well, I think it'll stimulate him.
Yeah.
It's a new challenge.
Yeah.
And I think he'll attack it, but he'll have to run. You'll have to run a few more clicks at fullback than you do on the wing.
Yeah.
That's my only concern with him going back to fullback, that, you know, aerobic capacity. But
Adam, I watched one of the plays, I'm pretty sure it was last week, where he knocked on, his last game, where he knocked on, and he just had that look of disappointment about him. He wants to play better. He wants to perform for the team and lead the way, and hopefully this will be the game that offers him that opportunity.
I think we'll see a lot of players palmed off. I know they're good defenders, Bulldogs, but he loves that big palm when he's running back, Cobbo. So,
well, we talk about how he always reminds us of GI.
Yeah.
Very similar.
Yeah. That's it. And moving along to the Cowboys versus Titans, footy back in Townsville on Saturday afternoon. I'm actually going to be up in Townsville because the Queensland Cup match of the round is the curtain raiser, the Mackay Cutters versus the Tweed Seagulls. So you can catch that game on 9 now, Saturday afternoon, 3 p.m. If you're Cowboys or Cowboys or Titans fans, the future of your club will be on show for that one. But how crucial, Lockyer, is this game for both of these teams? They're almost neck and neck in terms of points, but the Cowboys have been going a lot better than the Titans of late.
Yeah, well, Cows had those few wins and went into a bye, so there's momentum there.
Yep.
So I guess for them it's important to maintain that momentum with a good performance and hopefully a win for them. While for the Titans, they in parts of the game they look like they're a top 8, definitely a top 8 team, and then they have these sort of lapses or periods where they turn into a bottom 4 team. So I think for them it's about trying to get a consistent 80 minutes performance, just for them to build, because I think I heard Des say they're away from home for a month. Yeah. They got a tough month ahead of them, and I reckon this next 4 weeks could make or break their season.
Yeah, and I think that stat there, Adam, offers a wonderful opportunity for fans to enjoy this. 3 straight wins for the Cows, 3 straight losses for the Titans. There is a real challenge in front for both of these teams. I think we're in for an absolute bell ringer this game. I think it'll be the match of the round.
I couldn't believe watching them at home Sunday afternoon, 16-0 up, get run down by the Raiders. Like, as playmakers, you're 16-0 up. What do you do?
Oh, look, well, you just got to complete your sets. I'd start kicking early.
Yeah.
Just get them coming off their try line. The longer the game goes, and there's still 16-0, difference, then they start taking risks, pushing passes. But, AJ Brimson is not an experienced six. He might be an experienced player, but he's not an experienced six. And then
Tom Weaver filled in,
how many games would he have played?
Half a dozen, I reckon.
So that's probably, the inexperience in those two guys in those positions at that level was probably the difference.
Yeah, and Lockyer, I'm sure you would have played it similarly in some of the games. When you got to 18-0 up, it wasn't about desperately scoring the next try. It was about denying the opposition the opportunity to score a try. And you kick to the corners, make sure that they start their carry from 4 or 5 metres out from their own line. The pressure is on them all the time. So it's an opportunity. I think this is going to be a fairly handy game, this one, but there's pressure on for a win.
Yeah, Anzac round game, always a big game up there for the Cowboys faithful there in Townsville. That's on Saturday afternoon, but it all kicks off Thursday night. Make sure you tune in. If you're not at Suncorp Stadium, live and free coverage on Channel 9. Broncos, can they bounce back against the Bulldogs? We'll see you back next week here on Queenslander.